Hello, my name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. So today is the second part of my tracking reading series, and today we're going to talk about sort of the dashboard view of the gigantic TBR / collection management spreadsheet that I have. I will have part one listed below as well as up in the cards, and I would definitely recommend watching that first because I'm going to be referencing kind of how that's laid out quite a bit in this video. Now, in terms of why I'm doing these, I'm a gigantic book nerd, and one of my favorite parts of sort of collecting books is tracking them. I like to have a lot of stats. I like to have kind of a comprehensive list of everything that I have and where I got it and how much I paid for it, all those kinds of fun, nerdy details. So I really enjoy doing that for myself, and this is the kind of thing that I would love to hear from other people how they do it. So I'm hoping that this just opens up a space for there to be more of these types of videos because, like I said, I find this really interesting, and I hope that you do too. So just to recap from my first video, this TBR / collection spreadsheet that I have has two main tabs. There's a supporting details tab, which is what I really got into in the first video, which has a line-by-line list of every book that I have, both physical and ebook and audiobook too. So it has a lot of different kind of data points about any given book. Things like how long it is, what year it was published in, is it somehow like a diverse book in terms of person of color or orientation, things like that. What genre is it in? What was my rating for it? How much did I pay for it? On and on and on. So there's probably, I would say, about 20 to 30 data points that I collect for every single book that I have. So I have that. That's the kind of down in the weeds, nitty-gritty details spreadsheet, and that is what I use as the basis to create kind of a bigger picture dashboard spreadsheet, which is what we're going to talk about today. Now, my plan is that I'm going to take some screenshots and that I probably will be talking over those screenshots. I'm not totally sure how I'm going to edit all of this together, but bear with me because I'm not totally sure what the end product is, so this might get a little off or weird, and if it does, I apologize. But anyway, as you can see, I have a bunch of different graphs and sort of just like collated data up here on the dashboard. So first of all, one thing to keep in mind is that the reason I have this dashboard at all is that what the details spreadsheet can do pretty well is collect data on a as of right now basis. So if I went and looked at my spreadsheet right now, I could see as of this exact moment exactly what was in my collection. But trying to speak to that kind of spreadsheet that's changing all the time over time can get tricky if you don't essentially like benchmark it at whatever frequency you think is appropriate. So what this spreadsheet represents, this dashboard spreadsheet represents, is year over year, where did I kind of take a snapshot of my reading at the end of the year, and how does my current collection compare to that? So you can even see just by looking at some of this that I've changed on a year-to-year basis what I'm tracking, how I'm tracking it, etc., etc. So for instance, this sort of ebook versus hardback versus paperback section, I've just decided this year to add that in, so that's why there's a lot of blank data there. You can also see that I'm kind of collecting raw numbers on the left, and then on the right is where I have some actual like graphics of it to sort of display the data that way, and I kind of like having both, and that's, you know, it just appeals to the nerd in me to have a little bit of a visual as well as some of the details on this front page. And then I also like to use this to sort of tally up how my collection is changing on a day-to-day basis. So at the bottom, I have my section of, you know, books in versus books out as a whole, and this isn't just books that I've read, this is also books that I'm just DNFing or getting rid of or whatever, as well as any books that are coming in the door. So this lets me see kind of on a month-to-month basis how I'm doing in my overall collection management. Is my collection growing? Is it shrinking? What are the trends? Are there certain times of year that I tend to get rid of more books? Is this a normal amount for me to have read or gotten rid of in a given amount of time, etc., etc. So this is something that I actually manually calculate just because I wasn't happy with how any of the formulas that I was trying to set up to calculate this for me were working. So this is the one part of this spreadsheet that I do calculate, you know, by hand basically. And then at the very bottom you can see my active TBR section. You can also tell when I decided to institute an active TBR versus a total TBR, which was relatively recently, but I've really liked how that's worked out because in my opinion, a TBR is only useful if it's something that you can kind of process and get through. If you're just feeling overwhelmed and drowning in your TBR, I just don't think it's doing you a lot of good. So this is a kind of method that has worked really well for me, which is having an active TBR versus books that are technically on my TBR but are not something that I'm actively trying to get to anytime soon. So that's what the dashboard looks like, and that's where I make, that's kind of where every few months I'll kind of see how things are going, see where my collection is heading, if there's any trends that I'm noticing, if there's anything I want to change, which is all very unnecessary and extra, but this is a hobby for me, and this is a part of how I enjoy my hobby, is looking at things like this. And like I said in my previous video, I based my entire TBR / collection spreadsheet off of a year-over-year reading tracker that Firefly Book Blog put together, which I will have linked below, and it's a resource that I really recommend if this type of tracking is of interest to you. And so this is the second video in my little How I Track My Reading series, and there's one more to go. So this is my spreadsheet for my collection and my TBR. I have a completely separate spreadsheet that is much more closely based on Firefly Book Blog's spreadsheet that does track my year-over-year reading. And the reason I do that is because I want to also in that spreadsheet be able to track library reads or anything that I've just borrowed, whatever, that isn't necessarily in my TBR but I have read for the year. And it's a lot of the same types of data points. It's a little less comprehensive, but anyway, that will be the final video in this little trilogy of how I track reading. Well, at least how I track reading in a spreadsheet. I do think I want to then make a video with like a total workflow of how I track what I'm thinking about getting versus what I actually have and what I've read. So that'll also be a thing at some point. Anyway, I know that this was a lot shorter than the first video, but there was, we covered a lot of ground in that first one. So yeah, I think that is going to do it. If you have ideas about how to track reading, if you have different ways that you track reading, definitely let me know in the comments. Like I said, I'm super interested to see how other people kind of approach this. And yeah, I think that will do it. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all of that information listed in the description box below. And yeah, I hope you're having a great week. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.